Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be reading The Child's Rebellion by Ariana Cinnabon, and it is bugfic by Raven. Because this is by far one of the best fanfics in my opinion. Has such a good story building and just such a good fanfic. And I found one person that has fanficked it, but they only have two or three chapters done. So I'm going to be fanficking it. It has 58 chapters, and this is chapter 1. And there's also a second one. There's also a second book. His name was Tommy Innes. I think that's how you say that. Innes. And he was born to touch the stars. Of course, touching the stars was going to have to wait, because he'd lost that dream the moment his parents had died when he was only 10 years old. The moment he had watched the starship explosion and felt a bit of his heart die within them. He'd lost that dream when he was transported to prison, and then to the place called Pogtopia. He'd lost that dream when he watched hundreds of children starve on the streets of Pogtopia, when he and his two friends became the lone survivors of the Red Planet's genocide. When they were rescued and he was captured again. But maybe one day he would regain the dream. Maybe he would hunt down the mass murderer that had executed his friends and gain his revenge. But that day was not now. And now he sat in prison and stared at a faraway stars. Perhaps there would be people that he could call family again. People he would see again. People whom he had lost years ago, one day, because he was an avian born to forever be alone amongst the broken stars. The avians did not fall unless they wanted to, or a fan fiction about rebellion. Sorry, my reading skills aren't amazing. Okay. You may have heard of him. For such a powerful species, Tommy Innes sure felt powerless in such a situation. The orange jumpsuits that made up Tommy's fellow prisoners' uniforms did no justice to the pitiful scene, though it did solidify his contempt for the other inmates. He crossed his arms and tapped his foot against the metal floor, blonde hair falling across his face, much to his general annoyance. Come on, kid, hand over the fucking food, the leader said. How fucking cliche. He was a phantom. That meant that he had a shock collar strapped around his neck so he couldn't return to his phantom state, though the pastiness that marked him of his birth species made Tommy think of a boiled egg. God, he hadn't had a good boiled egg in years. No thanks. No thanks. Tommy drawled. No thanks. I'm really bad at this. Raising an eyebrow and glancing down at his plate. It was made entirely of greenery and a few fruit pieces. The avian's dish, his race, long gone. His hands were white where he clenched it, because his food wasn't about to be stolen. Not now, not after so long. Listen, kid. Tommy flushed at the statement, anger filling him. Sure, he was the youngest one in the high security space station of a prison, but he wasn't a kid. He hadn't been a kid in a long time, not ever since his father whispered words in his ear and needed to be memorized, not since his father had died in a space explosion that had sent Tommy's escape pod floating into space until the arachnids had picked him up with their beady red eyes and chirped at him with their annoying teeth. He, being 10 at the time, nearly 7 years ago, hadn't spoken anything and had played dumb. He had been a kid since the fields of golden grass turned brown, since the feelings of hunger, since the exclusions that made him curl into a ball at night and cry. Tommy was an avian, but the rest of the prisoners, he was human. To his knowledge, he was one of the last living avians in the galaxy. His father had been a ship captain. He'd just been transporting Piglin and Hoglin citizens to their home planet when they had been attacked from nowhere. It had made no sense to the 10-year-old Tommy at the time. Of course, he knew better now. He'd gotten the gist of what his family actually did for a living. He knew why the avians were nearly extinct. He knew to keep his secret hidden. Still, he wasn't a kid. No. No. No? No, he said. I don't know if you noticed, kid, the Phantom snapped, and Tommy was growing in exhaustion, but there are 4 of us, only 1 of you. So get some more guys, and we'll make it even. I can't do Tommy, apparently. So get more guys, and we'll make it even. Okay. He almost sighed when the first punch came swinging at his face. Almost. The guys were too predictable. Stupid thugs of some Carnavian, some species that decided to start after their supply ships. He ducked the first punch and charged the Phantom, kneeing him directly in the gut. With a flash of victory, the man dropped, and Tommy considered the fleeting feeling of triumph until his fist smacked into his cheek. Whoops, he forgot about the other individuals. Oh well. His lip was split, blood running down his face as he turned to face the Endirian, a smirk growing wider even as the pain from moving his mouth deepened. Unfortunately, the Endirian stood a good 5 feet away, his fist raised, and Tommy felt a sting of annoyance that he would have to grow closer. Stupid Endarians. The guy could fucking teleport, a rare ability among species. Tommy had only known one other person that could do it, and this pathetic person was using it on him in prison. On the other note, the idiot had used his racial abilities. That meant he would be in trouble. Already Tommy could see arachnid guards filtering into the faculty. Black phasers out and set to the blue state of stinging. He backed off, hands raised in the air. The superior smirk stayed on his face as he watched the arachnid guards circle the Endarian and the downed phantom. Oh God, Phantom. What happened? One of the arachnid guards barked at the two buddies that led Phantom had brought with him to harass Tommy out of his saggy-looking green leaves. He stole Coron's lunch, the other Phantom said, pointing a hand at Tommy. They turned his guns to him, and Tommy held his hands. Whoa, gentlemen. Whoa, gentlemen, he said scornfully, jerking his thumb at the lunch tray nearby aluminum table. As you can see, my lunch is green with golden apples and way too much balsamic vinegar. Tilted his head victoriously. If possible, the Phantom grew paler. This is my special vegetarian meal, not an Endarian or Phantom-made meal. He shook his head, trying his best to widen his blue eyes and Gondor pitiful stares. Some of the arachnids hold a soft spot for him because he hadn't gotten here like the other rebels have, through space battles and war zones and idiotic attempts at rescue missions. They were trying to take it from me. Me! A poor human boy was trying to eat. I really wasn't trying for trouble, sirs, truly. Bullshit, one of the guards said, but they nodded, unable to truly incriminate him when the actual evidence was in front of them. Prisoner T-869, please return to your cell. We'll deal with these four. It wasn't like the guards could tell the other prisoners that he was an avian. He was too special, too important. But they knew an avian meal when they saw one. And that meal was his. Preferably hastily. Hastily? Oh no, preferably harshly, he murmured, winking as the standing three and making sure to trot on Mr. Boss Phantom's hand as he stepped past. The sense of giddy joy filled him as he bit into the golden apple, and he flinched from his plate. Golden apples were given to avians in place of other necessary items that the prison refused to gather for a few amount of avians they had in the faculty, or rather the singular avian that they had. He loved golden apples. Oh, and T-869, Tommy turned around, confusion filling him, and the calling he hadn't expected to be let out until dinner, relishing in his victory. with his books in the silence. One of the guards was talking to him, and the others gathered up the four who dared to bother Tommy. He tilted his head, acknowledging the question. "Don't fuck up your cellmate." Shock filled him, but Tommy forced the question back down their throat. Taking a large bite of the golden apple, he kept his silence as he walked back down the cell halls. A cellmate, for a second time in all his years in the wasteland, he was getting a cellmate. He did not doubt that after the offense of the first person, that this one would be bad, if not somehow worse. The arachnids, while terrible people, were intelligent enough to grasp that the 10-year-old Tommy wouldn't frangelate well with others there, especially garnering the reality that most of the characters in the penitentiary were disastrous middle-aged criminals, and his 10-year-old self would have no doubt been mutilated in some way. And he knew that some of the guards held sympathy for the youngest one there, which, despite being the species that had murdered his parents and had handed him over to Tommy had some appreciation for that, despite hating them. He was just a kid after all. He wasn't a war criminal, the only son of two very crafty, very dead war criminals. At least from the arachnid's point of view, his family had been war criminals. He didn't even know the crimes his father had committed. All he heard when he was brought in, trembling and crying, and shouldering the realization that his family was dead, something about cherry lit and fraudulent liars, perhaps, on both his aunt and father's accounts. Though perhaps his family was a bit inflammatory when he was younger. He thought his father was married to the other woman around it. Turned out she was a technical aunt. She wasn't related to his father in any way, and so his mother became his aunt, though on occasion he called her mama, and her face softened from the usual stoic expression, and she'd pull him close in a warm grip and talked about traveling the stars with him. His birth mom had died when he was 3 to, finding something that had inadvertently ended in the death of both his parental figures, something that he carried in his subconscious with a vase clamp. The only thing that he would ever have from them was something that he both hated and loved. He wanted to fling the memory away, but all he could do was seize it close and remember the strands of numbers his father had whispered to him before dying in an explosion next to a brilliant glare of a cerulean star. There was nothing in that memory that he much remembered besides the desperation in his voice as they pushed him into the most promotional escape pod and swore him up and down that he would not recount to the enemy, in this case the arachnids, of his familial ties. He did not understand, for they were mere equipment advisors who transported people in this circumstance. He did not understand, but he did as he was told, because he was intelligent enough to perceive that they would not have advised him that without discernment. He understood now what they were, but they had never performed missions like sneak into a palace or assassinate a monarch, so that had motivated Tommy to assume that they were not in fact spies or anything of the like. He knew more about secrets and lies and misleadings now. He had questions inquiries that would never be answered because his family was stagnant and disparted long ago, gone in the stellar flare of the Astezer star, gone in the explosion, gone in the stillness of space, gone, killed by the arachnid ship that had attacked them with no warning from nowhere at all, a trap that had led to their death, to the death of everyone he had held dear, to a crew, to a family. Tommy's shoes clicked against the floor as he lifted his palm and pressed it against the palm reader, churning. As he stood there waiting for the screen to light up in its iridescent green light, when it did, and the metal slid open with a hiss, Tommy came eye to eye with a small boy sitting on the top bunk. He was short, with wavy chocolate-colored hair that dripped over his ears and partly over his eyes, harmonizing. Brownish eyes gawking at Tommy with hidden questions. Tommy quirked an eyebrow as the door slid shut behind him with a slight hiss. At least the entrance didn't squeak as some did in the faculty. You're sitting on my bunk," he deadpanned, and the boy jumped off with a small gasp, making space as Tommy sat down in the vacant area, surveying his new cellmate. He was thin enough, though Tommy was not enthused enough to assume that signaled in what?
Wake up!
I am awake. He was short, far shorter than Tommy by a good 150 centimeters. Okay, maybe that was exaggerating, but to be fair, the kid was very short. At least compared to him and every other person to exist at his age reasonably. To some, he would have appeared but to Tommy, whose entire tween growth had been about observing and discern if they were going to attempt to kill him or not. He quickly marked the intelligence that swept across the boy's eyes. Hello, the boy said, a shudder in his voice that wasn't entirely real. Exactly. It was extremely forced. Tommy snorted and turned over in his bunk to face the wall. Cut the bullshit, man. I know you didn't exactly. You don't actually talk like that. Then there was silence. What? The boy asked. Eventually, Tommy rolled his eyes, though his brown-haired boy could not witness it from his position that he rested. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I'm stupid? He rolled over in the bed until he faced the other way, and coincidentally, the boy who stood there, dumbfounded, actually, don't answer that. Look